I stood frozen in the empty driveway, my suitcase a dead weight in my hand. Morning sunlight glinted off the concrete where 3 cars should have been parked: Mom's silver Accord, Daniel's black SUV, and the blue sedan that the boys shared. But the spaces yawned empty, accusatory. My fingers trembled as I dialed Mom's number for the 5th time. Each ring echoed like a taunt until her voicemail picked up again. "Hi, you've reached Elaine Carter. I can't come to the phone right now." I hung up, the house key suddenly foreign between my fingers, its metal edges biting into my palm. This key had opened this door countless times since Mom married Daniel 3 years ago, but today it felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone else's home, someone else's life. 2 hours ago, I had woken to unusual silence. Our house was never quiet at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Not with Daniel's insistence on early weekend breakfasts. Not with Ethan's video games blaring. Not with Ryan's basketball bouncing in the driveway. But this morning, silence wrapped around me like a shroud. When my feet hit the floor, the stillness felt wrong. I padded down the hall, past the perfectly made beds in Ethan and Ryan's rooms. No rumpled sheets. No discarded clothes. Just empty, pristine spaces like display rooms in a furniture store. Downstairs, the kitchen counter gleamed, wiped clean. A single sheet of paper lay in the center, its corners aligned perfectly with the edge of the granite. Watching the house for a week. Food in the freezer. 7 words. 7 words to explain why I woke to emptiness, why all signs of life had vanished overnight while I slept. 7 words with no mention of where they had gone, why they hadn't told me, or why I wasn't with them. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I stood there, trying to make sense of the note. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "Lana, good, you're up," she said, her voice carrying that carefully cultivated lightness she had developed since marrying Daniel, the tone that pretended everything was fine when it wasn't. "Where is everyone?" I asked, my own voice sounding distant to my ears. "We're on our way to Hilton Head," she said, as if this explained everything, as if I should have known. Daniel thought we needed a family vacation. Spring break came at the perfect time. Family vacation. The words pierced like shards of ice. Why? My throat closed around the question. Why didn't you wake me? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you take me? Oh, honey. That artificial brightness again. Daniel found this amazing last-minute deal, but they only had room for 4. And you've been so busy with your photography project. We thought you'd appreciate the quiet house to yourself. A convenient lie. One among many that had built up over the years. The signs had been there all along. Daniel speaking around me at dinner, addressing questions about my day to my mother instead of to me. "How was Lana's test today?" he would ask her as if I weren't sitting right there, fork in hand. Mom's transformation had been gradual but complete, from the protective mother who once challenged my 3rd-grade teacher over an unfair grade to the appeasing wife who nodded along when Daniel suggested I was too sensitive or making things up when I pointed out how differently he treated me compared to his sons. The family photo on the mantel told the story clearly enough. Daniel's arm draped over his son's shoulders, Mom tucked against his side while I stood slightly apart. Clued but separate. Christmas when Ethan and Ryan unwrapped new gaming systems while I received a generic journal and scarf from the mall. The carefully casual way Daniel always managed to be working late on nights of my photography exhibitions. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear splashed onto my phone screen. With shaking hands, I dialed Dad's number. "Hey, kiddo," he answered on the 2nd ring. "Everything okay?" "They left," I said, my voice breaking. "They went on vacation without me. They didn't even tell me." Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, I methodically folded clothes into my suitcase, tears falling silently onto my favorite sweater. I tucked my camera carefully between layers of shirts, along with the memory cards containing months of work. "In the kitchen," I hesitated before scribbling on the back of their note. "Gone to Dad's. Don't worry about me." Before closing the front door, I paused by the row of family portraits in the hallway. My eyes lingered on a photo from before. Before Daniel. Before the slow erasure began. The Mom and me at the beach, our smiles genuine, her arm tight around my shoulders. I turned the key in the lock and stepped into the morning light, finally seeing the truth that had been there all along. My phone erupted with Mom's ringtone at 7:27 a.m., 3 days after I had settled into Dad's spare bedroom. The sudden noise yanked me from sleep, and her name on the screen sent a reflexive chill through my body. I answered, my voice thick with interrupted dreams. Hello? Lana. Her words rushed out, high-pitched and frantic. Someone broke into the house. You need to come home right now. Home. The word hung between us, hollow and presumptuous. What happened? I sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. The house was robbed while we were gone. Her breathing came in short, panicked bursts. The police are here. Daniel wants to talk to you. He says, she broke off. He says what? My fingers tightened around the phone. Just come home. Please. Dad drove me in silence, the streetlights casting rhythmic shadows across his grim face. When we pulled up to the house, 2 police cruisers sat in the driveway, their lights painting the familiar facade in alternating blue and red. The front door stood open. Inside, the living room had been turned upside down, drawers upended, cushions slashed, electronics missing. Police officers moved through the space with practiced efficiency, dusting surfaces and taking notes. Mom spotted me from the kitchen doorway and rushed over, her face blotchy from crying. Thank God you're here, she sobbed, reaching for me, then hesitating when I stepped back. Daniel materialized behind her, his expression cold and hardened. This is your fault, he said, his voice cutting through the background noise of police chatter. I stiffened. Excuse me. Mom placed a hand on his arm as if to calm him, but he shook it off. The door wasn't forced open. That means someone either had a key or left it unlocked. And since you were the last one here, that someone is you. I turned to the officer. That's not true. I locked the door before I left. I'm sure of it. Officer Martinez, a woman with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor, cleared her throat. Sir, the security system wasn't activated when you left, correct? Daniel hesitated. No, we were in a hurry. Martinez took notes, her expression unreadable. So, anyone with knowledge of the house could have entered? I folded my arms. Exactly. Mom's hands twisted together. Lana, are you absolutely sure you locked the door? I exhaled sharply. Yes, Mom. I wouldn't just leave it open. Why would I? Daniel let out a humorless laugh. To get back at us. Maybe you wanted to teach us a lesson for leaving you behind. My jaw clenched. You think I would stage a break-in? Seriously. Before Daniel could respond, a voice piped up from the side of the room. That doesn't make sense. I turned to see Ethan, my 14-year-old stepbrother, standing in the hallway. He looked uncertain, shifting from foot to foot. If Lana wanted revenge, why would she steal stuff? That's just stupid. Daniel glared at him, but Ethan didn't back down. And why was her room the only one untouched? That made me pause. My heart pounded as I realized what he was saying. I glanced at Officer Martinez, who was already making a note. That is an interesting point, she said. Miss Carter, would you mind showing me your room? I nodded and led her upstairs. As soon as I stepped inside, the contrast was jarring. Everything was just as I had left it. Bed neatly made, desk organized, nothing disturbed. No drawers rifled through, no broken items. My stomach churned. Martinez scanned the space. This doesn't fit the pattern of a standard burglary. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? She closed her notebook. I'm saying this might not have been a random break-in. Downstairs, voices rose. Daniel was arguing with Mom, and the officers were trying to calm him down. Ethan caught my eye from the bottom of the stairs, his expression unreadable. I don't think it was you, he murmured. For the first time in years, I felt a small flicker of solidarity. I turned back to Officer Martinez. So what now? She sighed. Now, we investigate. But if someone staged this break-in to frame you, they might not be finished yet. A heavy weight settled in my chest. This wasn't over. The tension in the air was suffocating. Daniel's accusation echoed through the space, and for a moment the room fell into a heavy silence. My mother stood beside him, wringing her hands, her eyes darting between me and the officers. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, anger and disbelief tightening my chest. How is this my fault? I managed to ask, my voice shaking with restrained fury. I wasn't even here. You left the house unlocked, Daniel snapped, his voice sharp. The police checked the locks. There was no forced entry. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I locked the door when I left. I made sure of it. Officer Martinez, a woman with keen eyes and a notebook in hand, cleared her throat. Sir, we can't jump to conclusions. The security system wasn't engaged when you left, correct? A flicker of hesitation crossed Daniel's face before he sighed. No, we were in a hurry. So anyone with knowledge of the house could have entered, she pressed. Daniel's silence was answer enough. I swallowed, my mind racing. Who would have done this? And why was Daniel so quick to blame me? Mom hesitated before speaking. Maybe we should focus on figuring out who really did this instead of pointing fingers at Lana. Daniel shot her a look of disbelief. You're actually defending her? She's our daughter, Mom said quietly, though her voice lacked conviction. And she wouldn't do this. I wanted to believe her, but I saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. Martinez flipped through her notes. We'll need a full list of missing items, security footage from the neighborhood, and statements from anyone who had access to the house. I have nothing to hide, I said firmly. Daniel scoffed. We'll see about that. I turned to Ethan, who had been standing silently near the stairs. Did you notice anything strange before you left for the trip? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, actually I did. I thought I heard something outside the night before we left. Like footsteps. My pulse quickened. Did you tell anyone? No. I thought it was just my imagination. Martinez scribbled something down. That could be important. We'll check the surrounding area. As the officers continued their investigation, I slipped away upstairs. My room was the only one untouched, and that still didn't sit right with me. I ran my fingers over the edge of my desk, scanning for anything out of place. That's when I noticed it, a small smudge on my windowsill like dirt from a shoe. I crouched down, inspecting it closer. Had someone entered from here? But if they had, why take nothing from my room? A knock on the door made me jump. Finn stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. Hey, he said. I know Dad is being a jerk. That's putting it mildly, I muttered. He hesitated before stepping inside. I don't think you did it. Anne, I think someone wanted it to look like you did. I met his gaze. Why? He bit his lip, glancing toward the hallway before lowering his voice. I don't know. But I think someone was watching the house before we left. My stomach twisted. Why didn't you say something sooner? I didn't think it mattered, he admitted. But now? I don't know. It just feels wrong. Before I could respond, Mom called from downstairs. Lana, the police want to ask you more questions. Finn gave me a meaningful look. Be careful. I don't think this is over. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in my chest. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than just a simple break-in. And I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth. The investigation continued, but something about the whole situation gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random burglary. The way my room had been left untouched, the way Daniel was so quick to blame me, it all felt off. Mom kept pacing in the living room, occasionally glancing at me as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare. The officers continued to take notes, dust for prints, and ask questions. Daniel, however, stood with his arms crossed, watching me like a hawk. Officer Martinez approached me. Lana, did you ever notice anything suspicious before the break-in? Anyone hanging around the house? Any odd phone calls? I thought back to the weeks before my family left. The strange way the neighbors had been looking at me, how the mail had been slightly disturbed some mornings, the uneasy feeling I had whenever I walked into the house. I hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. But nothing specific. She nodded. If you remember anything, let us know. Ethan walked over and lowered his voice. Lana, I need to talk to you. Alone. I glanced at him, confused but intrigued. All right. We stepped outside and he glanced over his shoulder before whispering, I think I know who broke in. I inhaled sharply. What? Who? Finn shifted uncomfortably. I don't know for sure, but the night before we left, I heard voices outside. I didn't think much of it then, but now I remember hearing someone say your name. Chills ran down my spine. My name? He nodded. It was late, maybe around midnight. I was playing games in my room and I thought I heard something outside. When I looked out the window, I saw a figure standing near the fence. My stomach clenched. Did you see who it was? Finn shook his head. It was too dark and they left quickly. I don't know, Lana. It feels like someone was watching us. A wave of nausea hit me. Why would someone be watching our house? And why would they mention my name? I don't know, Ethan admitted. But whoever it was, they were waiting for us to leave. Before I could respond, Mom called from the doorway. Lana, the police want to ask you more questions. I exchanged a look with Ethan before heading back inside. The officers were gathered near the front door, speaking in hushed tones. Officer Martinez turned to me as I entered. Lana, can we confirm where you were the night before your family left? I frowned. At Dad's. I left early in the morning after they had already gone. Martinez nodded, making a note. And did you notice anything unusual before you left? I hesitated before telling her what Ethan had just shared. She listened carefully, her brow furrowing. That's important information. We'll check the neighborhood cameras and see if we can find anything. Daniel scoffed. Or she's just making this up to shift blame. I glared at him. Why would I make this up? Someone broke in and I had nothing to do with it. Before Daniel could respond, Officer Martinez's radio crackled. Detective Ramirez here. We found footprints near the back fence, leading to the neighbor's yard. Martinez's expression turned serious. Copy that. We're coming out. We followed her outside, where another officer stood near the back fence, shining a flashlight at the ground. There, in the damp soil, were fresh footprints. They led directly to the house next door. That's the Johnsons' place, Mom murmured. They've been out of town for weeks. Martinez turned to another officer. Check their property. If someone used their yard as a pathway, we need to know. As the officers moved to investigate, Ethan whispered, This just got a lot creepier. I nodded, my heart pounding. Someone had been watching the house, and they knew exactly when to strike. The officers continued to search the area, and I could feel the tension rising in the air. Ethan stayed close to me, his eyes darting nervously between the house and the fence where the footprints had been found. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Do you really think someone was watching me? Ethan hesitated before nodding. I don't know who, but it's like they were waiting for the perfect moment. Officer Martinez approached us again. Lana, we have reason to believe that whoever did this had knowledge of your family's schedule. Daniel scoffed. Or maybe she told someone. I rolled my eyes. Oh, sure. Because I have so many criminal friends. Mom sighed. Daniel, enough. Let the officers do their job. Martinez continued. We checked the Johnsons' yard and we found more footprints leading toward the alley. We're pulling security footage now. I swallowed hard. And if they come back? Martinez's expression darkened. Then we'll be ready. Ethan shifted on his feet, his voice barely above a whisper. Lana, what if they weren't just watching? What if they were looking for something? I turned to him, my stomach tightening. Looking for what? He hesitated before speaking. I don't know. But this wasn't just some random break-in. They knew exactly when to strike. And they didn't touch your room. That part still bothered me the most. Why go through the entire house, steal electronics, ransack everything except my room? It made no sense. Martinez must have seen the look on my face. Lana, is there anything in your room that stands out? Something valuable or unusual? I frowned, thinking hard. Not really. Just my camera, my laptop, but they didn't take those. Daniel scoffed. Probably because they knew you'd staged this whole thing. I whirled on him. Are you seriously still blaming me? Why wouldn't I? He snapped. It's convenient, isn't it? You stay behind and suddenly there's a break-in. Mom placed a hand on his arm. Daniel, stop it. Martinez sighed. Mr. Carter, let us do our jobs. Right now, we're focused on finding out who did this, not pointing fingers. Finn tugged my sleeve. Lana, we should check your room. Just in case. I nodded, and we hurried upstairs while the officers continued their work. Inside my room, everything was in its place, just as I had left it. But Ethan's words gnawed at me. What if whoever did this had been looking for something? Crouched down and checked under my bed, then my closet. Nothing seemed off. My laptop was still on my desk, my camera bag untouched. But as I scanned the room, my eyes landed on my bookshelf. Something was missing. I frowned, stepping closer. Ethan. I think something is gone. He raised an eyebrow. What was there? I ran my fingers over the empty space. A small wooden box had sat there for years, one that belonged to my grandfather. It wasn't worth much, at least not to anyone else. But inside it held old letters, photographs, and a key I had never been able to identify. My grandfather's box, I murmured. It's gone. Ethan's eyes widened. Why would someone take that? I shook my head, my heart pounding. I don't know. But whoever broke in, they weren't looking for money. They were looking for this. Downstairs, voices rose. The officers had found something. I rushed to the landing just as Martinez turned to my mother. We checked the cameras, she said. And we have footage of the intruder. My breath caught in my throat. Who was it? Martinez hesitated, then turned the screen toward us. A grainy image filled the screen, but the figure in the footage made my blood run cold. It wasn't just some random burglar. It was someone I knew. I gripped the railing, my mind spinning. That's impossible. Finn leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. Lana, why is your uncle breaking into the house? I stared at the grainy image on the officer's screen, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. The man in the footage, creeping through our backyard, slipping into the house under the cover of darkness, it was my Uncle Martin. No way, I muttered, shaking my head. That's impossible. Finn's eyes were wide with disbelief. Lana, why would your uncle break into the house? Mom clutched her chest, stepping closer to the screen. It can't be. Martin wouldn't do this. But there was no denying it. The footage clearly showed him slipping through the back door. He had moved with purpose, like he knew exactly where he was going. Daniel crossed his arms, his expression dark. So, are we still pretending Lana isn't involved? Because this seems pretty convenient. Officer Martinez ignored him. Lana, when was the last time you spoke to your uncle? I swallowed hard. Months ago. He and my dad had a falling out and we lost touch. I had no idea he was even in town. Mom's hand shook as she looked at me. I haven't heard from him either. Martinez exchanged a glance with her partner before turning back to us. We'll need to bring him in for questioning. Do you have any idea why he might have targeted this house? I thought about the missing wooden box, my grandfather's letters, the key that had been inside. Could Martin have known about it? Did he know what the key was for? I think he was looking for something specific, I admitted. There was a small wooden box on my bookshelf. It's gone. Martinez's brows furrowed. What was inside? Old letters, photographs, and a key. I don't know what the key opens. Daniel scoffed. So now we're in some kind of mystery novel? Give me a break. Mom shot him a glare. Daniel, stop it. This is serious. Martinez nodded. If the box is missing, then that gives us a motive. If your uncle was after it, we need to find out why. One of the officers stepped forward. We've put out a notice on Martin Carter. We'll bring him in as soon as we locate him. The room felt heavy with tension. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of everything. Why would my uncle break into the house? Why now? And why take the box? Ethan nudged me. Lana, you don't think he'd hurt anyone, do you? I hesitated. I don't know. But if he was desperate enough to break in, he might be desperate enough for anything. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Officer Martinez closed her notebook. We'll be in touch as soon as we have any updates. In the meantime, if you remember anything else, call me. With that, the officers left, and the house fell into an uneasy silence. Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Well, this is a disaster. Mom sat down heavily on the couch. Martin, why would he do this? I couldn't answer her. I had too many questions of my own. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the footage in my mind. My uncle had broken into our house. He had stolen something valuable, at least valuable to him. But why? What was in those letters that was worth risking everything for? Frustrated, I sat up and turned on my lamp. I needed answers. And if no one else had them, I would find them myself. Ethan must have heard me moving around because a few minutes later there was a quiet knock on my door. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. I shook my head. "I can't stop thinking about that box." He hesitated before stepping inside. "Lana, what if whatever was in that box was never meant to be found?" The weight of his words settled over me. "Then I guess it's up to us to figure out why." Finn gave me a nervous smile. "Then let's start digging." The next morning I woke up with a sense of urgency. My uncle had broken into our house for a reason, and I needed to find out why. Ethan was already waiting in the kitchen when I came downstairs, a determined look on his face. "We need to figure out what was in that box," he said as soon as I sat down. Mom glanced up from her coffee, her eyes tired. "Lana, I don't want you getting involved in this." I shook my head. "Mom, he took something that belonged to Grandpa. That box meant something to him. I need to know why." Daniel scoffed from the other side of the table. "You need to stay out of it. Let the police handle it." Finn frowned. "Yeah, because they're doing such a great job so far." I ignored Daniel and turned to Mom. "Do you remember anything about that box? Did Grandpa ever talk about it?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Your grandfather was always secretive about certain things. He used to say some family stories were better left buried." Finn and I exchanged a look. "Maybe Uncle Martin didn't agree," I murmured. Before Mom could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw an unknown number. My heart pounded as I answered. "Hello?" A rough voice came through the line. "Lana, don't go looking for answers you don't want." I stiffened. "Who is this?" A chuckle. "Just stay out of it. This isn't your fight." The line went dead. I pulled the phone away, my hands shaking. Finn leaned forward. "Who was it?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know. But whoever it was, they don't want us looking into the box." Mom's face paled. "Lana, maybe Daniel is right. Maybe you should let this go." But I couldn't. Someone had broken into our home, stolen something personal, and now they were threatening me to stay quiet. There was no way I was letting this go. I turned to Ethan. "We need to find Uncle Martin before the police do." His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Yes. He's the only one who knows the truth." Finn hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. Where do we start?" I thought about it for a moment. Grandpa's old cabin. It's the only place he ever went when he wanted to be alone. Mom's eyes widened. "Lana, you can't seriously be thinking about going there." I met her gaze. "I have to." Finn grabbed his jacket. "Then I'm coming with you." We snuck out of the house, my heart pounding. As we drove toward the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every car that passed made me nervous. Every shadow felt like it was hiding something. When we finally reached the cabin, it looked abandoned. The windows were boarded up, and the front door was slightly ajar. Finn swallowed hard. "Are we really doing this?" I nodded, pushing the door open. The inside was dusty, the furniture covered with old sheets. But it was clear someone had been there recently. Footprints in the dust, an empty coffee cup on the table. We stepped inside, our footsteps echoing. "Uncle Martin?" I called. No response. Finn nudged me. "Lana, look at this." I turned and saw him holding something, an old letter yellowed with age. It was addressed to my grandfather. I took it, my hands shaking as I read. "The key unlocks the past. Don't let them find it." I looked up at Ethan. "What does this mean?" Before he could answer, a noise came from outside. Footsteps. Finn and I froze as the sound of footsteps approached the cabin. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure whoever was outside could hear it. I clutched the letter tightly in my hand, my mind racing. Ethan whispered, "What do we do?" I swallowed hard. "We hide." We ducked behind an old wooden cabinet just as the front door creaked open. Through a small gap, I could see a shadowy figure step inside. My breath hitched. It was Uncle Martin. He moved cautiously, his eyes scanning the room like he expected someone to be there. His clothes were wrinkled, his beard unkempt. He looked different, older, more worn down. He carried a small duffel bag, which he set on the table before exhaling heavily. Finn shifted beside me. I grabbed his arm, silently telling him to stay put. Martin pulled out a stack of old letters from his bag, similar to the one we had found. He flipped through them, his expression unreadable. Then he muttered, "I told you to stay out of this, Lana." My blood ran cold. He knew we were here. Finn tensed beside me. I knew we couldn't stay hidden forever. Slowly, I stood up, my hands raised in surrender. "Uncle Martin." He turned, his face unreadable. "Lana." Finn stood beside me. "Why did you break into the house?" Martin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I had no choice." I frowned. "No choice? You stole from us." He shook his head. "I didn't steal. I took back something that never should have been in that house." I tightened my grip on the letter. "The wooden box. The key. What does it unlock?" Martin's expression darkened. "Something that should have stayed buried." Finn and I exchanged a glance. "What does that mean?" Finn asked. Martin exhaled sharply. "That key belonged to your grandfather. He kept secrets, Lana, secrets that could destroy people. When he died, I thought it was over. But then I found out the box still existed. I had to get to it before they did." Chills ran down my spine. "Who's they?" Martin's jaw clenched. "The people your grandfather tried to protect us from." I shook my head. "None of this makes sense." Martin hesitated, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. "Read it." I unfolded the paper, my hands shaking. It was a letter written in my grandfather's familiar scrawl. "If you're reading this, it means they found me. Key must never fall into the wrong hands. Protect it, Martin. Do not let them uncover the truth." I looked up, my breath shallow. "What truth?" Martin's eyes were filled with something I had never seen before, fear. "The key opens a safe. Inside that safe are documents, evidence of something powerful people don't want anyone to know." Finn's voice was barely above a whisper. "What kind of evidence?" Martin glanced toward the door, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "Proof of corruption. Crimes that go deeper than you can imagine. Your grandfather was part of something big, Lana. And when he tried to expose them, he paid the price." A lump formed in my throat. "You're saying he was murdered?" Martin didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. The room felt like it was closing in around me. My grandfather had died years ago. I had always believed it was natural. But now... Martin stepped closer. "Lana, I know this is a lot to take in. But you need to listen to me. If you have the key, you're in danger." Finn grabbed my arm. "Lana, we should go." But before we could move, the cabin door burst open. A group of men in dark suits stormed in, their eyes cold and calculating. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "You have something that belongs to us." Martin moved protectively in front of me. "You're making a mistake." The man smirked. "No, Martin. The mistake was thinking you could run forever." I felt Ethan's grip tighten on my arm. My heart pounded as I realized we were trapped. And we had just walked straight into the danger my grandfather had tried to protect us from. Tension in the cabin was suffocating. The men in suits stood like statues, their expressions unreadable. My pulse pounded in my ears as I glanced at Martin, whose jaw was clenched tightly. He knew these people. He feared them. The man with the scar stepped forward. "Give us the key and we'll pretend this never happened." Martin shook his head. "If I give it to you, you'll bury the truth." The man smirked. "And what's wrong with that? Some truths should stay buried." Finn grabbed my hand. I could feel the sweat on his palm, his fear mirroring mine. I took a shaky breath. "What's in that safe?" Carface's eyes flickered to me. "Nothing you need to worry about." Hand over the key. Martin's stance was firm. She doesn't have it. The man chuckled. Come on, Martin. We both know that's a lie. Two of his men stepped forward. My heart stuttered. Finn squeezed my hand tighter. Martin suddenly lunged, grabbing the nearest chair and swinging it at them. Run, he shouted. Finn and I didn't hesitate. We bolted for the back door as Martin held them off. I heard a grunt, the sound of a struggle, but I forced myself not to look back. My only thought was escape. We burst into the forest behind the cabin, branches whipping against my arms. Ethan was right behind me, his breathing ragged. Where do we go? He gasped. I didn't know. But stopping wasn't an option. Footsteps pounded behind us. They were chasing us. I pushed forward, adrenaline giving me strength. Trees grew denser, the moonlight barely piercing through. My foot snagged on a root and I stumbled. Ethan grabbed my arm, yanking me up before I could hit the ground. Keep going. We ran until my lungs burned. Until my legs felt like they would give out. Then, through the trees, I saw it, a road. Cars' headlights approached. Wave them down, I gasped. Ethan ran into the road, flailing his arms. Car screeched to a stop and the driver, a middle-aged man, rolled down his window. What the hell are you kids doing? Please help us, I begged. Some men are chasing us. He barely had time to process my words before the men emerged from the trees. The driver's eyes widened. Get in. Ethan and I scrambled into the back seat. The driver didn't wait. He slammed his foot on the gas. Car shot forward just as the men reached the road, their faces illuminated for a split second in the headlights. Carface's expression was pure rage. We sped away, the cabin disappearing into the darkness. My body shook violently as the adrenaline crashed, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The driver glanced at us through the rearview mirror. What the hell was that? I swallowed hard. I wish I knew. Finn sat beside me, his hands gripping his knees. What do we do now? I reached into my pocket, feeling the small metallic shape press against my fingertips. The key. I still had it. I met Ethan's gaze. We finished what Grandpa started. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. That means finding the safe. I nodded. And opening it. The driver dropped us off at a gas station miles away, handing me a phone to call for help. I hesitated, then dialed the only number I could think of. Lana. Officer Martinez's voice was sharp with concern. Where are you? We're safe for now. But I need your help. She didn't ask questions. Tell me where you are. I gave her the location. 20 minutes later, she pulled up, her face pale with worry. As soon as I climbed into the passenger seat, she demanded, What happened? I took a deep breath. I know why they broke in. Martinez listened as I told her everything. Uncle Martin, the break-in, the stolen box, the key, the men at the cabin. When I finished, she sat in stunned silence. This is bigger than I thought, she finally said. If what Martin says is true, that safe could expose something huge. I nodded. We need to find it before they do. Martinez hesitated. Then she put the car in drive. Then let's go. As we sped into the night, I clutched the key tightly in my palm. This wasn't just about my family anymore. This was about the truth. And I wasn't going to stop until I found it.